If you are currently experiencing a behavioral issue of any kind, feel free to email me, as I do offer virtual coaching. And if you would like, you can go to my Facebook page and you can see all the reviews that I've had from previous clients. If you find the work that I do here valuable and you want to support it, there is a Patreon now available. Just $5 a month will get you access to exclusive content only posted over there. And if you would like to make a one-time donation, I have a Cash App or PayPal. I greatly appreciate any and all support. I also want to extend a massive thank you to those of you who have signed up for the Patreon. It really means a great deal. It's very humbling. I really appreciate your support. You guys are awesome.
Because my conversation with him, I should never brought him on my first podcast. I'll admit that. I should have audited his method. Because what was the point that it all fell apart? Was when I got into the loose leash thing, right? And he went crazy. He started putting videos up because that was the point of him being offended, right? It's all going to fall apart anyway, because it will. Because I'm solid in what I'm saying. This is it. So if I have a conversation with somebody, trust me, it's all going to break down at a certain point if they have a certain idea, right? Because it matters. You know, that's the point. It matters. The method matters. But all to say that, yeah, you went on there, but the thing is, I always believe good always comes out of everything, right? And so even in that conversation I had with him, it put him in that position of that leash method, which blew it out of the water right there. I already knew, but then he lined it up. He could have done that a year ago. He did it because he felt pressure from you having that conversation.
If you're able to get the results that you're happy with, and someone else can look at that and say, oh, that's not right, but yet you have something that pretty much anybody is like wanting and desiring, it's really hard to say that what they do and how they are is just no good and it's all wrong and nothing's ever going to come from it. No one's ever going to get help from it. That's just a weird stuff to me. It's just like, that don't make no sense to me. That's the ego part of people that is just stuck in that one dead set. This is it and can't be because they have never even had any. But the thing I guess I could say behind it all is, especially just nowadays, it's simple but not easy.
I don't have anything to prove to anybody.
I've got nothing to prove to anybody.
Where is the evidence?
Why would you not believe somebody, and why would somebody lie? That's just stupid.
You want the shade for a minute? Sometimes they leave bowls of water out here, but I didn't see one. Goose, come on, this way. Got a lot of action down here today. Music blaring. It's like people are coming out for lunch. And little Grey Goose is along for the ride. Alright, got some dogs across the street. Oh, hold on. Wait. Alright, come on. Let's go. They were crossing the street. I didn't want to get in their way. Come on, girlfriend. Let's go. Hi. She's very nice. She may avoid it. That's okay. Thank you. She gets that a lot. You know? Absolutely. What's your dog's name? Brisket. Brisket. Oh, I like that name. I've heard. Grey Goose. Like the vodka, yeah. I always say she's like a little shot of doggy vodka. You look like a brisket.
How much do you trust your dog? And you can see there's a cop coming. I love it when the cops see my dog me off leash. How much do you trust your dog? Right? I trust Grey Goose 100% to not do anything stupid, to listen to me, and to not run in the fucking road. I don't recommend you do this. However, it's just a demonstration of what can be accomplished when you create the right, when you build the right foundation in terms of the relationship you create with your dog. It comes down to trust, respect, effective and clear communication, and the power dynamics being established correctly. Dogs see things in terms of hierarchy. They must see you at the top of the hierarchy. You must establish this from day one. If you cannot do this, then things like this will not be possible. So how do you get to the point where you can walk your dog off leash anywhere you go? Well, it's simple. There are certain criteria that need to be met, like when the leash is on the dog, it must consistently demonstrate that it is following you, that it is not resistant to having the leash on, and it is not resistant to the direction you are giving it once the leash is on. It must consistently demonstrate that it is not going to negatively react to things in the environment, whether it be a dog, a squirrel, a person, a car, someone on a bike, or should I say, it's not going to act on impulse when those things present themselves in the environment. It is adhering to the direction and leadership you are providing at all times. You are in complete control of the situation, and that the dog consistently demonstrates that it is following you, and that you are the single most important thing in the environment when you're out. So like here, if I turn and go the other way, Grey Goose is following me. She's showing me she's with me. So how do you get to the point?
I originally posted this video May 3rd of 2025 because somebody had asked me, what did you do to get Goose where she is today? Now, when you hear me go through all of this in this video, I want you to keep in mind what I discussed the other day as far as a dog who can recognize danger. Goose was a stray for I don't know how long, but consider all of the variables. You have a dog who is a stray and understands the dangers of the real world, a dog who can see danger, the issues that are likely rooted in genetics, Goose's natural temperament and personality, and then of course the lack of leadership that she was getting, which led to the insecurity. And let's put all that shit together, and when we can see what we get in the end. So in part 4 of my Lessons in Leadership series, there was a question from an individual named Jennifer, and she had started with a compliment. She said, "This is leadership. Thank you so much." She's referring to a section in that video where I'm leading Goose through a situation where she's scared, she's uncomfortable. There's noises in the environment that make her uncomfortable, and her first instinct is to run from those things, which is perfectly healthy and normal. But since I know that there's nothing to be scared of, I'm leading her through. So in the end, we build a more resilient dog, a more confident dog, and a dog who understands that there are some things that are just not to be afraid of. So Jennifer asks, I'd love to know what you did prior to this to get this kind of trust and cooperation from her. I have a young dog that notices everything and gets overwhelmed, say in a parking lot where cars and people are coming and going from all directions. I've tried flooding, but he literally shakes. He seems to need to see everything all at once, and it's too much. Any ideas are welcome. Well, before I get into the first part of your question, Jennifer, I'm going to give you some advice when it comes to your dog. Now, you had mentioned that he was 4 years old, so he's an adult. The question then is, how long have you had him? And what was the series of events that led up to him being this way when it comes to cars or people coming and going from all directions? So if there were things that weren't done or were done leading up to how he is now, then that would explain why he is the way he is in those situations. However, this can also just be part of his temperament. You know, like Goose, Goose's natural reaction to sounds that are unfamiliar or things that come out of nowhere, she wants to avoid those things. Now you can see in my earlier shorts when I first got Goose, this is actually something that I did with her. It was the week of Halloween. You know, I got her on October 19th. So I was already working with Grizz and his owners at that time. And so they invited me to a Halloween party and they said I could bring Goose. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to bring her to an environment that she may not be comfortable in, to further socialize her and to also kind of test her out. I wanted to see where she was at. Could she handle all the different sounds? There are also dogs passing through, you know, the kids making noise. There was a lot happening, and you can see that it did make her a bit uncomfortable. But the best thing you can do, and you'll see, is I'm not talking to her. I have a leash on her, and so I'm kind of keeping her in one place, but I'm just letting her take it all in. It's best to not pet the dog in those moments. Don't coddle the dog. Don't reinforce that state of mind. I don't want to feed into that part of the dog that's insecure and that's fearful. I want to let the dog work through it. And then the more you expose them to that sort of thing, then you're going to build a stronger dog. And you see it in the title of this next clip, making a dog confront their fears builds confidence. There's a range to this, right? You don't want to push the dog too far too quickly. So you just kind of work them up to that. And you see how she's reacting to the kids, and she's not quite sure. And there's a lot happening in the home at this particular time. So there's a very similar situation to what you described, where there's people, cars, and it's very distracting, and it can be stressful. But I would just kind of start small and work your way up. Because you said you've tried flooding, and I'm not against flooding. However, it depends on the dog in question. Some dogs do really well with flooding, other dogs not so much. So I would recommend starting in environments where maybe there's just a little bit going on that doesn't send him into such a state where he won't follow you or listen to you. Because this sort of thing happens in levels, right? Like, for instance, the noises you saw in that video where I'm leading Goose, that wasn't enough to get her to completely freeze in fear. But there are other situations where, like construction, she really doesn't like construction, where there's loud banging. Those are moments where she's a lot more likely to lock up, and she might really express that she really, really hates this. So you have to just understand, what's the threshold for your dog? Like, what kind of environment could you put him in that you could sort of work up to environments where there's a lot more going on? Because the idea is that you want him to not scan the environment and focus on everything around you and pay more attention to you. So a lot of this is kind of rooted in insecurity. So we have to do things to make the dog feel more secure and to not really care so much about what's happening in the environment. Now, I may sound like a broken record with my advocation of this, but I do find that Halties are a great tool to be able to do that, especially when you have a dog that really intensely scans the environment. It's just a really great tool to be able to keep that dog focused on walking, focused on you. Every time that dog scans, because what it is when the dog's scanning and paying attention to anything but you in the environment, it's kind of feeding that side of the dog where it's feeding the insecurity, it's feeding the unstable mentality that it's currently holding. So to eliminate that and to get the dog into a more calm state of mind, I have to break those moments of fixation, even the scanning. Even if it's not locked in on something, the fact that it's scanning, I need to stop that, get that dog focused on me. Right, so that it can kind of tune out the environment. But I would start in environments where there's not as much happening, and so it makes it easier to redirect your dog's focus to get the dog to pay attention to you, and then kind of work your way up. So you just that's one of those things where you just have to understand your dog and know what the limit is before that dog really starts to freeze, before that dog starts to panic, before that dog really is kind of tuned you out and cares more about what's happening in the environment. So it's just you're just kind of baby stepping towards those more hectic environments where the dog is completely stable, confident, secure, and knows that you're in control. But Jennifer, if you would like to send me videos of that, because I'm looking for more people to send me clips that I can review and analyze. So if you would like to send me a clip of that, I would love to see that, and then I can give you more specific instruction once I see it happen. Now, to answer your question about Goose. So I have some clips lined up here, and I'm going to show you. This first clip here was actually the day I met Goose, when I went to the adoption event. And it was the first time I took her outside for a walk. Now, when I got Goose, I had already known what intent, or I should say, I had already had an intention for what my next dog the purpose of what that dog was going to serve. Now, I had intention when I adopted my first two dogs. You know, it wasn't just a flimsy, like, I just feel like getting a dog. There was a reason I was getting a dog. And I had already committed myself to this being a lifelong process. You know, I had made up my mind that once I signed those adoption papers, that's it. There's no going back. So I was already in the mindset of this is a life commitment for me. And that was for both my dogs. So knowing the intention before you get a dog is very important. I would never get a dog with a flippant mindset, or just because you feel like it, or you saw something cool on social media, or to fill some kind of emotional void. Maybe you're lonely, or I would never get a dog for those reasons. The dog should serve a purpose, and the dog is an opportunity for personal growth, right? The dog is our greatest teacher and our greatest asset in terms of reaching a better understanding of ourselves and reaching the next level in terms of just, you know, being human. It's a great way to develop leadership skills. It's a great way to develop self-control. It's a great way to develop discipline. It's a great way to develop your communication skills. Having a dog really forces you to fine-tune those things and develop those skills that maybe you didn't have before. So my intention with Goose was I knew I needed a dog who's going to help me with other dogs. I was looking for a helper dog. So I was looking for a particular type of dog. So when I met Goose, the first thing I noticed about her was that she was completely calm. You know, at the adoption event, it was an animal hospital, and there were puppies, there were dogs, there were a lot of kids, there was people. You know, it was near Halloween, and so they're having a little costume show and whatever. It was a noisy. You know, it wasn't chaotic, but it was a noisy environment. There were dogs barking, puppies doing their thing, kids making lots of noise. And the first thing I noticed about Goose when I turned the corner and saw her was that she was stone cold. Just didn't care. None of it seemed to faze her. And so as soon as I saw her, and I actually almost passed her up. I almost wasn't, you know, because the way shelters have structured the adoption process is much different when I got Kaylee and Bruno. And, you know, back then you could just walk into a shelter and meet a dog. Well, that's not the case anymore. So that wasn't the case with the Goose. They basically said, okay, we're going to give you a meeting. If it goes well, you take the dog home. And I was like, whoa, that's fast. So I almost didn't agree to the meeting. So I almost passed Goose up. So as soon as I saw her, though, when we walked into the adoption event, and I walked past her and our foster didn't recognize me because everything was done online. Like I said, the first thing I noticed about Goose was how calm she was and how she was just very stoic. Now, Goose is interesting in that when she's nervous about something or fearful, Goose doesn't really shake. She practices avoidance. So she was sitting there, and I would be willing to bet, knowing what I know about Goose now, that the noises were affecting her, but she wasn't showing it because she was also with her foster. So the things that she had told me about Goose were, Goose doesn't want to walk. You know, when I put Goose outside, her first reaction is to come back in. So she wants to run back in the house. So she said she had house training issues. She was 2 years old. At least that was her estimate, because she was found as a stray. And they said she still has house training issues. So she still goes to the bathroom in the house. We don't like that. But when I put her outside, she wants to run back in. I try to take her for a walk. She doesn't want to walk. She wants to run back to the house. So these are all signs of an insecure mind, right? She's not getting the leadership that she's looking for. And then she said, oh, she likes to hog the toys, and she's been lunging at dogs' faces, and I don't know why, but of course when I hear that, I hear something completely different. So I'm thinking, okay, I really want to see this. So this first clip here, you'll see this is the first time I took Goose for a walk, and she has this, you know, ridiculous Wonder Woman costume on, and, you know, like I said, it was a Halloween show, and I'm not into putting costumes on dogs or clothes on dogs. Now, coats in the winter, that's one thing. That's a practical piece of clothing to keep a short-haired dog warm. But you can see Goose does not want to follow me. as what the foster said, Goose wanted to run back to the building to get back to her foster, because that was like her sense of security. Even though the foster wasn't really giving her the leadership she needed, she still felt more secure just being being next to the foster than being outside with me. So you see how Goose practices avoidance with things that she's unfamiliar with, and at that moment I was the unfamiliar thing she wanted to run away from. She did not want to follow me. And so you can see, in these other clips too, I'm just trying to kind of work with her. I'm trying to build some kind of level of trust with her, but I'm also trying to establish some semblance of leadership, right? Because like I said, moment of contact is when you start building relationships. So I'm trying to show her that I'm a strong, stable presence that she can follow. But she wanted to resist at first, which is perfectly fine. It's a matter of building these things. Like I said, relationships are built over time. They're not going to happen right away. When I took her out for her first walk, I was sold. I said, okay, I'm taking this dog. That's what did it for me. When I saw it on a leash, I said, all right, I'm taking this dog. I had a really, really good feeling about her. Now, here's what's interesting. As I had mentioned before, when you take a dog home, away from the environment that it's currently in, and I do this with sometimes with aggressive dogs too, where I'll take the dog away from the owner. Maybe I'll bring the dog home for a couple of days, because I want to see what the real dog is like. And 9 times out of 10, you'll get a different dog. So in Goose's case, you see this clip here. This was the first walk that I took her on when we got back to my apartment, and you could see how much different this looks. Goose is a lot more relaxed. She's following me. She's not trying to run away from me. Now, she was nervous in the car ride. She was anxious in the car ride. She was panting and showing that she was a bit stressed out, because it's like these 2 strangers are taking me. Where am I going? Perfectly understandable. But we didn't pet her, didn't feed into that side. I just let her work herself through it, and we just ignored her. We don't want to fall into the trap of petting and feeding that mentality. So at this moment I saw, like, okay, I'm getting a different dog now than what I was told from the foster. Now, she still showed moments where she wanted to run back to the apartment once she knew where the apartment was. And you'll see at the end of that clip, I'm shooting a video, and this is the video I was actually shooting, so you can hear what I'm saying in this video clip.
I just adopted this dog, little gray Goose. And the foster had said she won't walk. She'll run outside and pull you back in the house. And it's just a good example of what happens when you remove the dog from in a situation, an environment, or people that she has to believe that she needs to control, and now you get a different dog. We literally just got home from adopting her. Do you see a dog who has issues walking? Come here, girl. Yeah. Come here. Yeah. She's doing great. Right?
I'm still just kind of teaching her to follow me, establishing some leadership, establishing the leader-follower dynamic. And there are moments where she wants to run back, like I said. And so we're just kind of working her through that.
So day 1 with Grey Goose has been very successful. As you can see, she is absolutely wonderful on the leash. Has no issue adhering to my leadership. And I think it's so funny how, like I said, the foster said she would immediately try to run in the house. She wouldn't go to the bathroom outside. She never wanted to walk. But in the right hands, we don't have those issues. She's eating well. She's warmed up to the environment. She's very comfortable. No issues as far as her trying to take control of the environment, trying to get on the furniture. No issues as far as giving her food and taking it away. bones, bully sticks, nothing like that. I think she knows her place around here, and it's...
Now, this was, I believe, the very next morning. I had noticed that walking Goose on a leash, there's certain things I'm looking for when I first take a dog. And I was starting to see little signs that led me to believe that I could probably get Goose off leash fairly quickly. She seemed to have a much more structured mind than the average dog. And so you could see in this clip, this is when I was starting to I just wanted to see what she would do. I was playing around with the off-leash stuff because she was doing really, really well on the leash. But then I wanted to see, okay, if I take off the leash, what is she going to do? And so I was just starting to play around with that. Now, which leads to this next clip where I'm describing how a dog earns freedom. And this is 4 days after I adopted Goose. Now, I brought Goose home on a Saturday afternoon. And it was by, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it was October 19th. This is October 24th. I was already off leash with Goose. And because she was already demonstrating that I could trust her off leash and that she was going to listen to me. So we had already built a baseline of trust. There was already a baseline of respect because as I described in my previous video, that as soon as I bring a dog home, I'm establishing, I control everything. I'm establishing the boundaries. I didn't let her on the furniture right away. When I presented a piece of food to her, I made sure we went through that whole ritual of her being patient, showing manners, and showing me respect, and giving up ownership of the food to me before she eats. So I go through all of that thing with all of these different things with any new dog. And then of course, just conveying the strength of my personality to show Goose that I am the most dominant figure in this home. And this is the interesting thing about dogs, is when, you don't just build trust with a dog by, say, communicating in a way that doesn't hurt them or abusing them or so on and so forth. You also build trust with a dog by showing them that you are a strong leader. Because now the dog doesn't have to control anything. That's a lot of where insecurity comes from in dogs, is especially if you have more submissive minded dogs, is if they believe that you aren't in control, or you've demonstrated that you're not strong enough to control everything, or they feel like they have to control something within a particular context, then that's what leads to the insecurity, because now they believe that they have to take the leadership role and they don't want that position. But when you show them in all areas, in all contexts, that you are running the show, you're in control, you know how to lead and direct and guide them in any situation, then they trust you a lot faster, because you're communicating to them in every situation that you're in the leadership role. They don't have to worry about anything. That's partly why me and Goose got here so quickly. Goose is the beneficiary of 15 years that I've worked with other dogs. She's able to benefit from all of that knowledge and experience day one. From the second I meet her, she's receiving that. And so you're able to achieve these things. I'm not going to say it's with every dog, but me and Goose got there pretty quickly. She was able to just kind of relax and trust me because I was demonstrating that I'm the kind of leader that she can just relax and follow. Now you see here, this is the same day that I began taking Goose off leash, that we took her to the dog park for the first time. And she did really, really well. Now I can't find the clip. I don't know what I did with it. But, now this is the first time she actually met Grizz. But there were some dogs that showed up later on where Goose was... She was interacting, but she was also kind of running back to me when she would get a little bit freaked out. So I had to just let her know that I didn't want her to cling to me, and I would kind of push her away and send her back to socialize with the group. And that's when I noticed that she was sort of starting to discipline the other dog. That was a great thing for me to see, because I was looking for more of a disciplinarian for my next dog. And Goose was already starting to show that she had what it took to be that. So I had to kind of build her up a little bit. All the materials were inside of her, but I had to kind of bring them out. Now you can see in this clip too, she's really coming out of her shell. She's enjoying herself. This is the first time we actually saw her run. And I couldn't believe how fast she was, but she was actually starting to chase the ball. She was starting to, you could see a more confident side of her start to come out. Now you can see in this next clip, this is all early on in my channel, where it was one of the first times Grizz came to stay with us. And you see here where, leading back to what the foster said, where she said, well, Goose would hoard the toys, and she's been lunging at these dogs' faces. So this is where I started to see some of that play out. But I had already seen Goose discipline other dogs, and so I knew she wasn't going to take it too far. So I decided to let her set these boundaries where she's actually establishing to Grizz that, you know, you're not going to demand this bully stick from me. And he gets too close, and she lets him know that that was not the right move, and he backed off after that. So if you want to go back and watch some of these earlier videos, I would recommend it. If you want to just see like the bits and pieces of what I did with Goose, or the principles that I was teaching, that I was showing you what I was doing with her along the way. There's a lot of really good stuff in my short section, especially early on. And you can kind of piece that puzzle together.